Welcome. I'm so pleased to invite everybody here and to have you join us on this fantastic evening. What a lineup. And this is 4 of my favourite people, all skilled, talented healers in their respective fields. And I can testify a delight to work with. And collectively, they've worked with thousands of people on their cancer journey. So as you know, today is a big day for me. It's the anniversary of my mum passing in 1978 when I was 10 years old. And this is something that I'm doing because there's so much that we've learned about cancer in the last few years that can make such a big difference to people going through the journey today, opportunities that my mother never had. And so I am relishing the opportunity to share with you information that can absolutely be life-changing, can open up doors of possibilities and empower you on your own journey. There's so much that's not shared, and it's webinars like this, hopefully, that can get more of that information out there. As an example, what do we even mean by an integrative journey? So just to kick things off, I'll just explain the perspective that I've taken on that, which is an integrative journey through cancer is one that embodies and encompasses mind, body, and spirit, the whole person. And it also takes the best of all modalities and works them together in the best way possible to give the best result for an individual. So conventional medicine or allopathic medicine, natural health, functional medicine, we take the best of everything and work it the best way we can. There's so many tools in the armoury, and I'm so looking forward to tapping into the knowledge of all of these wonderful speakers here to go through some of them tonight. This webinar is my first attempt to expand the awareness of options, and it's my intention to do more, many more. My wish is that you leave this webinar tonight feeling inspired, empowered, hopeful, and more informed than you were when you started. And we're going to do our very, very best to do that. And over the next 60 to 90 minutes, we're going to have 15 minutes from each of the speakers. I'll introduce each of them individually as we go through. And then we'll finish up with a Q&A at the end. So as we go through, if you've got any questions, just make sure you pop them in the chat box and we'll select a few that we can answer here. I will say up front, if you're popping questions in there, we're not able to answer any questions specific to your own journey. So just please do keep the questions more about general and broad things that might help a large number of people. To kick it off, we thought it'd be a great idea to do a karakia. So I'm inviting Katie to jump up and set the scene with a karakia. So I'll just swap the screen over. Just give me a little moment.
Kia ora whānau. This was gifted to the Aratika Cancer Trust. Haki roto, hati waho, aro ki te ha o tēnā, o tātou. Aro ki te ha o nehe, kia mau, kia ita, kia tuturu. Ahora, aroha te tahi ki te tahi. Whānau, whānau. Haro mai te toki, hau mai e hui e tā ki. Breathe in, breathe out. Focus on thought to the breath of everyone gathered and connected. Focus on the breath of life, of times gone. Hold on to it, preserve it, keep its truth. Love and care between all things living, past, present, and future. We ready ourselves to come together in unity to proceed.
That's fabulous. Thank you, Katie. Okay, so the first speaker up we've got tonight is Justine Laidlaw, and I am so delighted. Of all the wonderful women we've got here tonight, Justine is the one I've known the longest. And Justine's got a fascinating, heroic story in my opinion. And she's a 11-year colon cancer survivor, we call it, because life is maybe better than ever. We'll hear from Justine later on that. Justine chose to heal naturally and is now a holistic cancer coach. She's practicing in her own practice, which is called The Natural Bird, and she's going to talk tonight on the 10 keys for radical remission based on the work of Dr. Kelly Turner. So I'm going to hand it over to now. It's my absolute divine pleasure to welcome you, Justine, and thank you for being here.
Wonderful. Thank you, Lisa. It really is an absolute privilege to be here and to be able to share this wisdom and with these other amazing ladies who I all know very well. So it's wonderful to be able to present this information to everyone tonight. But what I'm about to share with you may well challenge some of your thoughts on healing. However, it could also open the door to quite a powerful perspective, and that's really one that embraces a holistic approach to healing cancer by addressing not just the physical aspects of healing, but also the mind, our emotions, and our most beautiful inner spirit. So I'm going to ask you a question. So let's assume for a moment that you've just been diagnosed with cancer. And what if you viewed this diagnosis as an opportunity to discover the deeper aspects of yourself that might need healing? What conscious changes would you be prepared to make to outlive your prognosis? Now, I totally get this. I know this is quite personal, they're deeply personal and quite challenging questions, but the answers really do lie within your own strength and wisdom. So from my own cancer journey, all of this has really shown me that, without a doubt, a diagnosis is a massive wake-up call. And it totally reinforced me to reevaluate my life as it was. And it helped me to recognize what I had been neglecting. And it helped me move towards the vision of what my future self would be doing and a great appreciation for the simple things in life. It's a real reflection on what's most important in life. But over the past 10 years of working with clients, I'm absolutely yet to meet a cancer patient who is not sitting with some sort of unresolved conflict or past emotional trauma that's still lingering in their subconscious mind. And sometimes that is even without us realizing that that's happening. So tonight I'm going to share my healing story, as Lisa said, and then also the insightful research from Dr. Kelly Turner's Radical Remission project, which I'm deeply passionate about, and that's to hopefully bring you some hope, particularly if you are a cancer patient listening to this today. So back in 2013, I was 45 years old, and my husband and I were exploring Southeast Asia by motorbike. And we'd been traveling for several months, and it was an incredibly beautiful experience, but it was also an incredibly challenging way to travel. And during my travels, I was starting to experience quite a lot of fatigue and increasing pain in my gut. So on our return to New Zealand, after several medical appointments, it was confirmed that I had an aggressive tumour in my colon, and the surgeon had scheduled me for immediate surgery. Now, the news of that diagnosis, without a doubt, is a massive reality check. And I just deeply felt like I needed to take some time to stop and really reassess the situation and work out what I needed to do. Now, I gave myself 3 months, actually, to stop and breathe and start researching about what my options could be. But the biggest thing for me is I really wanted to get myself mentally and emotionally prepared for surgery and not be in a state of fight or flight. I had learnt that I was under a lot of stress, on so many levels, and my sympathetic nervous system would have been through the roof. So I did surrender and have that surgery, as I said, 3 months later, and it was a 9-hour surgery which confirmed that I had a very aggressive colon cancer. It had progressed into my small intestine and completely encompassed my ovary, the stomach muscle, and many lymph nodes. And when you waltzed along to the oncology office, of course, they give you your statistics. And the prognosis that I was given was that I had a 16% chance of surviving 5 years if I did nothing about it, like did no treatments, and a 50% chance of surviving if I had done the recommended chemo and radiation. Now, for me personally, I actually made the decision to decline the chemo and the radiation. Now, this was, a choice that wasn't made lightly, but it was heavily influenced by my own father's colon cancer diagnosis, and that was 10 years prior to me being diagnosed. Now, sadly, his cancer had progressed before he had even finished his 6 months of treatments, and he was deemed terminal. So I think it's really important here that, I know from my father's perspective, he believed those words. He believed he was terminal. And we've got to be careful on how we take those words. So sadly, my father decided to take his own life before the cancer took him. So the impact of his decision to take his life was absolutely, most definitely another trauma that already added to the layer of my own emotional burdens that I had experienced. And even though I accepted the diagnosis, I totally refused to accept my prognosis. I had got myself into a place where I could totally connect in with that. I believed that it wasn't my time to go, and that I believed that I could heal. I just needed a strategy to be able to do this, and I really didn't know what that was to start with. Now, I reached out to a naturopath in Auckland who specialised in cancer, and he was part of a team providing quite an integrative approach to healing. And it was that team that helped me understand the importance of flooding my body with oxygen, and I embraced treatments like intravenous ozone, as well as doing treatments for myself at home. They also placed a big focus on detoxing my body, optimizing my gut health with really getting my microbiome happy, working on boosting my immune system. And they also encouraged me to start practices like meditation, did quite a bit of counseling, and quite a few energy healing modalities. Now, 6 months after the surgery, I had a PET scan, and that scan revealed that I had active cancer in a large lymph node. And I can clearly remember the surgeon saying to me, "Justine, whatever you're doing is not working. Your cancer's back." And he believed that it would spread rapidly through my body if I didn't start a chemo immediately to shrink the node and then have more surgery. Now, by this stage, I had learned a lot about processing emotions, and I knew I'd been thrown back into a lot of fear, and then obviously grief, because you start to have that vision of what your life might be very short. But again, I sat with that emotion for a while, and I came up with the decision to decline his recommendations, and that I trusted in my own healing path. So I did have a lot of resistance from not only medical people, but from my family members. And I would get comments like, "Oh, you stupid girl, what are you doing? You should be trusting the experts. You need to do this to save your life." But I have this inner strength and determination, and I think it actually propelled me into gave me more determination to do this the way that I wanted to do it. And I believed that really empowered me to defy the odds. So it was at this point that I also recognized that my emotional landscape was deeply intertwined with the cancer diagnosis, and I started to address the other deeper layers of traumas that I'd experienced through my life. And I'm happy to share some of those with you, just to give you a little insight how these emotions can hold in our subconscious mind. And you may even recognize some similarities in your own life. So I had carried quite a heavy burden of shame and guilt for many, many years, from quite a few different experiences in my teenage years and my early adult years. I'm not going to go into details as to what those were, but they were big. And I also wasn't able to have children, and this was as a result of a medical misadventure 10 years prior to getting the cancer diagnosis, and that left me with a lot of unprocessed grief. Didn't do anything about it at the time. We just thought, well, that's life, but didn't realise how that was creating quite a blockage in my body. And I'd also been hanging on to pain and frustration and anger from a relationship that was both challenging emotionally and physically. And then since my father's death, I had lived with persistent fear of being diagnosed with cancer myself. And most days I could hear myself saying to myself, oh my God, I hope I don't get cancer. So it's, it was really during that time, it was a real self-reflection time that I started learning about the connection between our thoughts and our emotions and our physical health, and how our beliefs can really shape our biology and the mind's potential to actually create physical change. And the people that I, learnt this from were names in their field like Dr. Bruce Lipton and Dr. Joe Dispenza, Anita Moorjani. By reading their books, they all helped me deepen my understanding of the power of the mind and the importance of going within to heal. So I started doing a lot of internal release work through practices like meditation and journaling and yoga, but I also sought the help of practitioners and energy healers who resonated with me, who could support me through the process. So 18 months later, I finally got that scan that showed no evidence of disease. That lymph node had disappeared. The surgeon said to me, he says, well, Justine, I have to give you credit where credit's due, because he believed he wouldn't see me alive to be having that conversation. So as Lisa said, that was 11 years ago, which is pretty amazing. So I'm going to connect into the work of Dr. Kelly Turner, because not long after, I got this result, I was also inspired by the book called Radical Remission. And she had researched cancer survivors who had defied the odds. And I'm just going to start my little presentation with this. So hopefully you will see my screen pop up now. So her research totally aligned with my own experience. And as soon as I'd really read her book, I found myself on a plane to New York, where I was fortunate enough to spend 10 days with Dr. Kelly Turner at a healing retreat, along with a group of other cancer thrivers who had the desire to teach her research to people in their own countries. So Dr. Kelly Turner had received a grant from the American Cancer Society to travel around the world, where she interviewed cancer patients that had what she calls a radical remission. And she defines a radical remission as a person that heals without conventional treatment, or where a person first tries conventional treatments which do not lead to a remission, so they then try alternative healing methods and do heal, or a person uses a combination of conventional and alternative healing methods. And when she interviewed them, one of the questions she asked them was, why do you think you healed? Now, she uncovered 10 key healing factors, and these 10 key healing factors are fascinating, I believe, because there's only 3 of these factors that focus on the physical changes that people made. And as you can see there, those physical ones are highlighted with the exercise and movement and the herbs and supplements. So they all took herbs and supplements, and they radically changed their diet. Now, I'm not going to go into details of diet because Katie's the expert in this field tonight, and she'll be sharing more with you. But what I think is really important is to realize that, when we look at these other factors that are all on the emotional, mental, and the spiritual aspect of healing. So I'm just going to cover briefly on a few of them. And one of them is about following your intuition. And I think this was really strong for me. I had to really trust my intuition. And what it really involves is listening to your inner voice, listening to that gut feeling, and paying attention to what your body and your mind are actually telling you. And a lot of these radical remission survivors reported a sense of knowing when something was or wasn't feeling right for them, whether it was a treatment plan or a lifestyle change, or even the choice to pursue a particular healing approach. So that's one of those key healing factors. I think one of the biggest ones that I've learned and a lot of people struggle with is the releasing of suppressed emotions. And the impact of this unresolved emotion like anger or sadness or fear or guilt on the body can hold a resonance in the body, and she likens it to stuck energy. And so when we start to release and let go of these suppressed emotions, it actually frees up space within our body for healing. And it has a real transformative effect on healing. And there's so many different ways that we can go about releasing suppressed emotions. But, you know, that's something that I can take people through in a deeper place later on. But, you know, it's really important that we focus on this aspect of healing because most people don't address it. Okay. And the last one I just wanted to touch on is the deepening of your spiritual connection, which really means it's a deeper sense of spirituality. It doesn't necessarily mean religion, but it could definitely mean prayer, and it could definitely involve finding a greater sense of purpose or connecting with nature, meditating, practicing mindfulness. It's really about, you know, cultivating a feeling of connection to something bigger than ourselves, which can really help reduce our fear, and it can absolutely provide comfort during challenging times. So that's giving you a bit of an understanding of what her book's about. So she wrote, her first book was this one, Radical Remission, Surviving Cancer Against All Odds. And she then released this book here called Radical Hope, which is her latest research. And now there's 10 common factors instead of 9. So that's an empowering read. Absolutely get hold of that book if you can. I totally recommend that. And then as far as what I've got coming up in terms of events, I do run the Radical Remission 10-week courses, which you'll see there on the far right. The next course isn't until February 2025. And in those courses, I bring in cancer survivors to share their healing stories, and then guest experts to help share their wisdom in their specialty field. And on Thursday, October the 24th, I'm doing a 90-minute webinar focusing just on these 10 key healing factors to help deepen people's awareness of them. And I collaborate with a woman by the name of Jenny Kennedy, and she's going to be joining me on that talk. Jenny has healed from incurable ovarian cancer. So her story is also phenomenal. And that was 10 years ago for Jenny. And Jenny and I help people navigate the deeper emotional work with our Healing from Within group coaching courses. So there's one coming up soon too. Tuesday, October the 22nd is the next one. And that's for really small, intimate groups. So hopefully that's helped give you a wee bit of insight and a wee bit of wisdom that healing can happen. And hope that's helped. Thanks, Lisa.
Lovely, thank you. I'll just get you to take your slides off if you can, Justine.
Sure.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing that story, Justine, and that wisdom. So much information in there that's so valuable. I do want to say a big thank you to everybody that's on the call tonight. We've got 134 on the call tonight now. And I do want to do a shout out. We ended up with 440 registrations. So we're delighted to be sharing the replay with everybody else. And I do want to do a shout out to Ayla from Sun Life, who I believe is also on the call, that put us on page 1 of the local rag. So a big thank you to Ayla for getting the word out there. The next speaker up is Katie Boyd. Katie, I believe, is Cooper's Beach. Is that correct, Katie? Yeah. What a delight to chat with Katie. Every time I get off the call from her, I've got a smile a mile wide on my face. Katie's a natural health expert, a metabolic cancer care specialist, and a professional athlete. Former professional athlete, I think, former or still current.
No, definitely years, lifetimes ago.
I have no idea how Katie has achieved so much in her 25 years, but her experience, care, compassion, and work ethic is beyond words. And I cannot possibly read out everything that Casey's been mentored by world-leading experts in, but to list a few, there's blood chemistry analysis, functional medicine, naturopathy, genetics, cancer hormones, microbiome health, and so much more, with a particularly strong foundation in nutrition. So currently Katie provides online consultations. She leads cancer masterclasses and organises retreats and for patients and healthcare professionals. So I'm going to hand it over to you, Katie, to pick up and share what you've got to share, which is so broad I'm not even going to list it.
Thank you. Thanks so much. And honestly, if anyone gets a chance to listen to Justine and do her course, it's phenomenal. You'd be a very lucky person to do that. Thanks, Lisa, for the opportunity. When we first started this conversation about, what we cover, I was thinking, fuck, how am I going to cover diet in 15 minutes and diagnostics? Because it's so broad, and it's such a, it can be such a bugbear for people and cause so much anxiety. And the last thing we need to be doing is eating guilt, because that's definitely not helpful for anyone. So what I wanted to kind of discuss a little bit to start with is, hopefully you guys can see this, is about what we are as practitioners in integrative medicine, is we're looking at the whole person. So it's a approach that focuses not on just treating diseases, but optimizing well-being through a blend of the conventional, but also the complementary therapies, and changing your diet's definitely part of this. But why this is so helpful, and I think important, is that you don't have to just do one thing at once. You can actually integrate. So we are thinking about the mind, the body, the spirit, the lifestyle, and the blood chemistry, and the diagnostics, and your toxicity in your environment. And, I think having a really, it's important to have a team around you: doctors, naturopaths, nutritionists, friends, mental health professional, coaches, good oncologists like Anna, nurses, physiotherapists, palliative care, you name it. I think it's really, really important to have a collaborative for your well-being. And one of the most important things in the literature that leads to longevity is, how many people do you have in your posse? Having 5 to 6 people in your posse to talk to every month is one of the key things that even surpasses diet. So that's our connection. But when it comes to the art and nexus of forward thinking and functional and integrative clinicians working for you, that's where I think the healing happens. And it's really, I think it's about an individualized approach. So I'm hugely passionate about this. So yes, diet's important, sleep connection and things like that. So let's get into the diet side of things. We know that it's a full-time job having a cancer diagnosis, from scans to having bloods done, finding a babysitter, trying to figure out how you're traveling from one place to the other. It's a big deal, and it can be incredibly exhausting. So one of the things about when people come to talk about, food, is let's just start with the basics, because that can have a hugely profound effect on fatigue from brain fog, from treatment, or just in general if we're not going through chemo radiation. Like, how do we do prevention? And we really want to think about real foods first. So in alignment with research, there are really simple and practical steps that can complement cancer treatment. The basics, which I think really maybe we really overlook this part, which is reducing or eliminating sugar, reducing processed meats and things like barbecue, charcoal, processed meats, seed oils, dairy, especially if it's grain-fed. So this is kind of American-based. Refined foods and junk foods. It may sound simple, but while we're getting rid of those, instead of it being let's eliminate that, why don't we think about what we can actually burst onto the scene and fill our plates with? So things like whole grains, which I'd put kind of more to the bottom, but we'd be thinking about vegetables, fruits, especially things like berries, which can help to reduce inflammation. Don't forget about herbs, spices. Think about if you closed your eyes and looked in your cupboard, what are the spices and herbs that you have? You'd be surprised how many of them actually have an anti-cancer effect. We also want to choose organic foods where possible. Think about, if we can, drinking filtered water, and those steps combined with things like making sure your environment's less toxic. So what you use on your surfaces for cleaning, what you put on your skin, the largest surface area of your body can make a difference. And when it comes to foods, there's a lower incidence of cancer correlated with a higher consumption of fruits and vegetables. So if you can't get it organic, think about washing the fruits and vegetables, going to your farmers markets. We know that in global research, and actually including in New Zealand in studies, it's shown that organically grown fruits and vegetables often has a high level of minerals such as magnesium, calcium, iron and zinc, and they're really important for immune function. The British Journal of Nutrition showed that there was a higher antioxidant concentration and less heavy metals like cadmium and pesticide residues in organically grown crops. And that's a really big deal for us. We really want to try and kind of mitigate that. If we're thinking about the microbiome, so that's literally the good gut bugs living from one hole to the other. They literally, if everything's healthy, they make up around about 1 to 1.5 to, if you're really lucky, 2 kilos worth of volume. And they are so key. One of the reasons that people respond differently to different types of medicines and herbals has to do with your individual microbiome. So your gut microbiota have also been linked to the success and the failure of multiple cancer treatments, including chemotherapy and cancer immunotherapy. So some may kind of know the brand names as Keytruda, but we're also talking about nivolumab and also pembrolizumab. So it does make a momentous difference, and I cannot stress how important that is to get in good quality probiotics and prebiotic foods. So think about prebiotic foods like anything that basically has fiber. So we'd think about celery, we got lentils, chickpeas, any sort of produce is going to be a great one. Even things like linseeds that have been ground down. So anything you can think of that's going to be high in fiber is going to be helpful. Right, so this is actually a study that was done quite a while ago looking at how the tumor microbiome diversity, so that's related to the gut bacteria, has a huge impact on outcomes. So I'm not making this stuff up, I promise. And one of the key things to think about is if you've had, so for example, antibiotics can kind of set you back by about 5 months. So really keeping on top of fermented foods. Other ones is kimchi, kombucha, sauerkraut, miso paste. You can mix in a teaspoon of miso paste into a salad dressing. So you're having it cold to keep the good gut bugs healthy. That's a really important part I would consider to think about. So don't be worried, because you can actually make quite a significant difference within that microbiome quite quickly. And this is kind of my go-to. So it can take between 5 to 7 months to resurrect the gut microbiome. This also includes when you're going through treatment, if you're going through chemo. So this is one of the reasons why an organic diet is just so important. And a key aspect, and I'm not saying, don't add in protein. I think protein is absolutely imperative. When number 2 says more than 30 plant foods a week, if you can, between 10 to 15 a day would be amazing. And that could also include fermented foods in there. So for example, let's fry an onion with some turmeric powder and some garlic in a fry pan. You might add some egg, make a scrambled egg mixture, and then you might put it on a kumara, some slices of kumara, or if you're going keto, it might be a cauliflower steak with some pesto or a side of spinach. Anything that you can think of ferment-wise on the side, so maybe a little bit of sauerkraut or kimchi. If you don't like those, don't worry. You can also do something like a shot of kombucha, which can be quite tasty and you can get used to. So it is amazingly important to keep the microbiome healthy, and we can actually test. There's stool samples that are done now. So I know if you look back on the antibiotics, so 5 months to get it back to normal. The only place that we can actually get fecal transplants done, which is basically taking healthy poo from a subject and either injecting it up the rectum or having it put into capsule form. Sorry if anyone's eating their dinner. I didn't even ask that. Put your envelope worked out. But you can get an immediate change, and but we do have to feed it. So this is, sorry, that's kind of going sidetracked, but fecal microbiome implants are becoming much more of a thing now. Right. If your health professional tells you that you can eat whatever you want, they haven't done their research. It is an indisputable fact that cancer cells consume or metabolize sugar/glucose at a much faster rate than normal cells do. And this is precisely how a PET scan is done. So with a PET scan, firstly, you drink a glass of glucose, and then the scan picks up where that glucose is being metabolized fastest in the body. The glucose hotspots are the areas in your body that this is most likely cancerous, and they can cancer cells can consume from anywhere from 10 to 50 times more glucose than normal cells do. Hence the research showing diabetes to be a risk factor for certain solid malignancies, and why having your HbA1c, your insulin, and your glucose fasting testing done is really important, and also looking at things like continuous blood glucose meters. So I think those can be a real key winner, and why it's quite good to make sure that your blood levels get low. I'm quite conscious of trying to stay on time, so this is a real simple slide that you'll all have access to all of these. But these are the base ones, so things like your blood cell count, which you will be getting and you should be getting if you are going through treatment. But I like to do all of these every 4 weeks for the first 6 months, and then pretty much every 2 to 3 months for the next 6 months after, once there's a remission, or even if not in remission. The one time for cancer drivers inhibitors, so this is just a list of mine. It's not extensive. This is a very, very skeleton list, but I do like to get these done. And usually if you go through chemo, try and get them done before you begin. B12 can change, and copper is actually a cofactor that can drive what they call angiogenesis, which is increasing blood supply. So we want to know what some of these minerals are. Vitamin D is super low in New Zealand, especially during our winter, and it's imperative for immune function. B12, iron, ferritin, homocysteine, some of these you'll have to pay for yourself. They're not funded, so it can be a little bit of a tricky one with your GP. But if you live in New Zealand, you can go to awanuilabs.co.nz, and you can just search self-requested tests, Awanui Labs, and you can find whatever your GP isn't really comfortable about doing. And usually they don't do them because they don't know what to do once they get the results. So this is kind of where you can see someone in your local area who's quite well versed in blood chemistry that can help you with that. And I really feel that it's important to ask the right questions. So these are questions, and this is a fucking awesome book. Sorry, I shouldn't swear, but it's so well worth it, because Nasha Winters has written an incredible book that I think everybody should get their hands on, The Metabolic Approach to Cancer. It's exceptional. There's a 10-part questionnaire at the start, and it has been absolutely fantastic to help kind of start dovetailing on where you may or may not want to put your time and energy into areas of your health or well-being that need some attention. So I absolutely love this. Are you open to integrative therapies and willing to work with integrative oncology experts? What experience and training do you have with integrative oncology, nutrition, or integrative medicine in general? This will tell you a lot about what they do and don't know. And then are you available and willing to communicate with my entire team and be supportive of my personal choice? So all things that I think are absolutely important and imperative, because you want to get a good team around you. And I think that's brilliant. And I'll stop there because I'll talk all day. Thank you very much, Lisa.
I wish we had all day to talk. So much. Thank you so much, Katie. We're going to move on to speaking with Susie now. So Susie Brown is a Precure certified mental health coach and trustee for Aratika Cancer Trust. And I think all of the ladies that you see here today have worked alongside Aratika Cancer Trust at some point. They do amazing work. Susie's also formerly a physiotherapist, and she's been on her own cancer journey as well, and has a very strong interest in functional medicine, and obviously is a dedicated cancer support advocate. So you'll find Susie also co-facilitates integrative cancer workshops and if I could get my words out, it would be helpful, retreats. And I'm going to hand it over to you, Susie, because you might be able to string a sentence together when I can't. So over to you.
I hope so. Thank you for that very generous introduction, Lisa. And it is certainly a privilege to sit in this circle of wahine who I have immense respect for. So kia ora koutou. And interestingly, I didn't know that was Katie's last slide, and I'm actually going to open with an edited quote from Dr. Nasha Winters. And she talks about metabolic health. Thinking about that, it's actually the symphony of balance within our body's orchestra, where nutrition, movement, and mind, body, spirit harmony all come together to create an individual masterpiece of well-being. I quite like that as a definition, and just maybe cancer diagnosis is perhaps the call or the opportunity to step up as the conductor. So in this space now, I'd love to share a little of the science around stress and anxiety, and then introduce and brief some of the biohacks for that. And if any of those resonate for you, please take a deeper dive online. So we know that stress is a very powerful carcinogen. It increases inflammation, it can spike blood sugars, and it suppresses our immune system. Some stress is necessary and beneficial, like loading muscles and bones, priming our immune system, fasting, exposure to hot and cold therapies, and brain gym. But for lots of us, our lifestyles may mean or may have meant a chronic exposure to stress, emotional, physical, and chemical, directly or even indirectly inherited through our parents' and even our grandparents' environment and experience of life. So this has put many of us into a chronic state of fight and flight, the sympathetic nervous system, where we continuously have a background alarm going off. And the body keeps the score. It doesn't know the difference between an actual threat in real time or one that we're even thinking about or perceive that hasn't actually happened yet. But the good news is that we know DNA is not our destiny. There's an understanding now that looks at genes or sort of describes them more like light switches that are turned on and off by environmental fingers from both our external and our internal environments. And that science is called epigenetics. So I just want to go on to essentially very much affirm Justine and Katie's message that there is a myriad of other robust tools that we can add to the toolbox alongside Western medical treatments if that's what we choose. The Western world's understanding is certainly deepening that the mind, body and spirit are not separate entities. They're all part of one system. So fear and anxiety often go hand in hand with a cancer diagnosis, with treatments, and also those post-treatment fears around reoccurrence, which are natural responses for many of us. But whatever unhelpful thoughts we keep running through our neural system kind of deepens that groove and becomes quite sticky. Thoughts are not facts. So the energy that gets dispersed with anxiety and fear of the future, of the unknown, of something that hasn't happened yet, it's not the best use of our energy or an optimal environment for healing. So sometimes we might literally be in a tug of war with anxiety and other emotions, and it's exhausting. And that tug of war ends up amplifying the emotions or feelings. So there's an exercise called dropping the rope, which we work through where we can decide to effectively drop the struggle, let go of the rope, let go of that tug of war, and lean into and acknowledge the experience and what the emotion is trying to tell us, because often it's a messenger. So Tara Brach uses the acronym RAIN, R-A-I-N, recognize, accept, investigate the emotion or the feeling, what's really going on for us here, and then nurture that. So letting go of the rope is then followed by some kind of action that's meaningful to us. So it might be some form of movement or exercise, it might be the breath, it might be music, it might be creativity, journaling, cooking, gardening, connecting with a friend, washing our car, maybe not so likely, not me, but choosing to do something that fills our tank. And at the same time, we can bring to mind our glimmers. So obviously, when we are in the throes of active treatment and feeling like poop and often alone with our thoughts, some of those ways that I've mentioned before of physically moving emotions are not available to us and they're not going to work. So glimmers are the opposite of triggers. So these are the experiences and events that release a cascade of the feel-good chemicals that are cancer-unfriendly chemicals. They leave us feeling safe, connected, at ease, relaxed, comforted, and nourished. So have a think of what some of your glimmers might be for you. Is it sunlight on your face? The voice of someone you love? The sound of the birds in the morning? Just simply the feeling of your own breath rising and falling? The smell of some of your favourite foods and fruits? The feeling of freedom you might have when you float in the ocean? The music you love? Or that feeling of connection that you have with your best friend? So make a mental or a physical note of what your glimmers are at some stage so that they're ready to bring to mind any time you might need them if you're feeling anxious or distressed. Because we know when we change our perception, we actually change the biochemistry in our body. So I'd like to talk also about the analogy of the car we are driving. So anger, fear, grief and sadness may all be passengers in our car. They can be safely seat belted in on the journey. We can tend and befriend them, acknowledge that they are there, perhaps look at the message they might be offering us, but they don't take over the driver's seat. And this is where language is really important, the ability to create some distance and neutrality. So instead of I am angry, I am anxious, I am afraid, because our cells are actually all listening to that and they will react accordingly. Justine mentioned the biology of belief. So we could say instead, a part of me feels angry, or a part of me feels afraid, or I'm noticing that I'm feeling a little anxious. So just by creating a little bit of distance or neutrality from the emotions that we're feeling has a biochemical effect. So one quick question we can ask ourselves in a moment if there's some distress present is, am I safe in this moment? There's no saber-toothed tiger or tsunami bearing down on me. So that question, am I safe in this moment, brings us back into the playing field of life, which is the present moment. And it might also give us the capacity to bring in and breathe in something different as well. Gratitude, love, joy, which all have the neurobiochemical effect that we're after with the cancer journey. So we know that grief and gratitude can coexist, and so can sadness and joy. So we have emotions, but we are not our emotions. And beliefs are like the operating system of the cell, and just like computer software, they can be changed to upgrade the system. So we know that if the brain expects, or the mind expects, that a treatment will work, it sends healing chemicals into the bloodstream, which facilitates that, the placebo effect. And the opposite is equally true and equally powerful. If we've been told, or if the mind expects that a therapy won't work, it doesn't. And that's called the nocebo effect. So a cancer diagnosis is perhaps also a challenge to create an environment for healing in a way we've never had to before. And maybe one definition of healing is the absence of fear. So stress, we can sometimes think about distress as the discomfort we feel when we are maybe not in harmony with our values, because values are connected to our feelings. So if we got rid of all of our uncomfortable feelings, it might actually impact on our values. So our uncomfortable feelings are also teachers. So I'd encourage you to take some time tomorrow to reflect on what your core values are, what brings you meaning and purpose, and how during this cancer journey can you get more aligned with that, even in the depths of your treatment. And there's a lot of useful resources online for value-based processes. We know that stress and anxiety can actually disarm the immune system. When people have organ transplants, they're given stress hormones to prevent rejection. So stress chemicals lower our immune response. And our immune response is very much our own personal homeland security team, looking for different protein markers on cancer cells and taking care of them. So immune system function is a biggie. And when we are running anxiety and fear through those neural grooves, we are running the wrong program, if that's consistent for us. And then we need to find some ways to hack that software. So with the cancer jigsaw puzzle, strengthening our immune system, as Katie's talked about, through deep nutrition, through building the microbiome, sleep, sunlight, hunting for the good stuff, being pretty careful with the internal dialogue, making sure our head is a nice place to be, are all ways of taking care of our immune system. So creating a calm, recognizing and bringing awareness to when the body is in fight or flight. Because between the things that happen to us and our response is a space. And in that space lies our freedom and our power to choose our response. And in that response, effectively, lies our potential for growth and for creating an optimal environment for healing. So moving into some of the biohacks, and I kind of like the acronym FEAR for forgetting every available resource, FEAR. So the breath is a big resource for us and an easy practice of caring for our neural system, well, every system really. So for some acute anxiety, distress or worry, there's a very quick technique, which is 3 nasal inhalations and then what I call the flat tire, which is releasing exhaling through clenched teeth. So I'm going to demonstrate, and then I'm going to get quite excited about the thought of over 140 people who are on this, all doing this collectively around the country, the collective breath. So 3 nasal breaths and then the flat tire. So it's and the science is there that there's a whole host of changes by allowing ourselves to take that deep breath and do that extended inhalation. The body has a feeling of safety, because if there was a tsunami coming, we wouldn't have the chance to take deep breaths. So let's all try that together now. Our panel will beautifully demonstrate alongside. So 3 nasals and then out through the mouth with clenched teeth, imagining a tire deflating. Lovely. Thank you for indulging me in that. The other thing is box breathing, which you may have come across. It's sometimes called 4 square breathing. And you can use this as a daily practice, or you can use it as for distress and anxiety as well. So wherever you are at the moment, if you can sit with your back, so feeling quite supported in a comfortable chair, and your feet anchored to the floor. If you're comfortable to close your eyes, I invite you now to just breathe in through your nose while counting to 4 slowly, feeling the air entering into your lungs. 1, 2, 3, 4. And now hold your breath for 1, 2, 3, 4. Now I'd like you to slowly exhale for 1, 2, 3, 4, and hold for 1, 2, 3, 4. So that can be a daily practice. Ideally, you'd repeat that for 3 to 4 minutes to get the desired effect. But look up box breathing online. And resonant breathing is a similar thing, but it's 5 seconds in, 5 seconds out, and you hold for a 2-minute period. And then we've got what we call heart-centered or coherent breathing. So if you'd just like to now bring your attention and awareness to your heart, to the center of your chest, and you can close your eyes if you're comfortable to do that. So just imagine that your breath now is flowing in and out of your heart or your chest area. Just breathing now a little slower and deeper than you might usually. Just find an easy rhythm now with your hand on your heart that's comfortable. And now with those deep, slow breaths, activate a positive, renewing feeling. Perhaps you can re-experience a time that you felt love or appreciation for a person, a pet, a moment in the ngāhere in nature. Or you can just simply breathe in and focus on an attitude of love or gratitude directed into your heart. Okay, we'll just bring you back into the space now. And there are other exercises which I can send you some files on that, symptom distancing exercises, because the mind can't tell the difference between something that we're worrying about or an actual real danger. And there's different ways of looking and feeling where we've got that anxiety stored in our body. For some, it's through the tummy, through some, it's up through the shoulders or the heart, and actually giving a shape to that and a colour. And then there's an exercise of kind of pushing that out towards the horizon in a different colour and shape. But I'll send you the PDF for that. And just the importance when we're going through this of a practice of cultivating a state of what we call wise hope, which is a state of being that's not dependent on the outcome, but it's a beneficial state to be in. And it's not relentless positivity. It's wise hope. So the novelist Barbara Kingsolver sort of talks about the pessimist might say, it's going to be a terrible winter, we're all going to die. The optimist will say, oh, it'll be all right. I don't think it'll be that bad. The hopeful person would say, maybe someone will still be alive after winter, so I'm just going to put some potatoes down in the cellar just in case. Okay, so hope is kind of a mode of resistance, and it's a gift we can cultivate. So cancer is often an introduction into a radically uncertain time. But in reality, all of life is uncertainty at some level. So that concept, which I love, of potatoes in the cellar, just in case. So that's a symbol of hope that involves wisdom and caring. And it's also an expression of resistance to some of the futility we might be nudged into feeling, or the relentless positivity, which isn't often authentic. So wise hope doesn't mean denying the realities or the suffering that we're confronted with. It means facing them, addressing them, but also remembering what else is present for us. What love is present for us, what connection is present for us, and the glimmers we talked about, the powerful shifts in our values that we recognise and help us to move forward to address the suffering. And hope is the thing with feathers that perches in the soul and sings the tune without the words and never stops at all. Mm-hmm. So I'd just like to finish with some thoughts from a US doctor, Dr. Zach Bush, who is an endocrinologist and internal specialist in internal medicine, and also a hospice director. And these are his thoughts. Cancer is a symptom. I think it stems from a disconnection from our bodies, from each other, from Mother Earth that is longing to heal us. We have been told that cancer is the problem rather than the result of a body struggling in its inherent capacity for health. We treat rather than inspire. True healing begins when we restore our connection to nature, to the wisdom within our bodies, to the world around us, and most importantly, to ourselves. Ngā mihi aroha.
Amazing. Thank you, Susie.
Welcome.
So I'm just going to take a moment and pop a poll up, just to try and get a feeling of what's the ratio. We've got cancer patients, we've got their supporters and caregivers, and we've got some natural health practitioners and health practitioners in general on the call as well. So I'm just going to pop a poll up so we can get an indication of what the ratio is of all of that. So if you can take a moment to answer that, should appear now. Hopefully you can see it. And while that's up there, I'm going to invite Anna to step forward. Dr. Anna Goodwin, I'm not sure I've got enough time to introduce Dr. Anna either. Her experience with integrative cancer care is entirely unique. She's been a practicing oncologist for over 30 years, now retired, but continuing to work with cancer patients as a natural health practitioner. I can testify for this one. She's renowned for asking the tough questions, such as why current approaches to cancer care often fail to meet patients' needs. And she's one of the most passionate and ferocious advocates for health freedom that I've come across. So, Anna, you are indeed one of my heroes, and I'm so looking forward to hearing you for the next 15 minutes. So without further ado, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you for that gracious introduction, Lisa. And it's a real privilege to be here with this group and to have such a beautiful turnout of people who are interested in embracing or at least learning about how we can put all this together to enhance the human experience and help people through what's oftentimes one of the most challenging things they'll ever face. And to begin to end the duality. And I think one of the most frustrating things in my career has been to see what total separation there is between our understanding of medical oncology and the needs and desires of the patient to be seen as a human being who needs nutrition, who needs spiritual support, who needs a lot of these things we've all been talking about. Our minds are one of the most important healing organs in our bodies. And as a person programs themselves, oftentimes they're, experiencing a greater level of negativity than they might experience just had they a little bit of hope and had some potatoes in their cellar. And I think that's a beautiful analogy that Susie shared with us. And I appreciate every time I see Justine at the natural coffee shop, or I've run into her in Tauranga. I'm so grateful that Justine refused to be a statistic. And I think it's, we have to quote people their prognosis oftentimes so that they can properly weigh up whether they want to have a mainstream treatment or not. But the important thing to realize is that human beings are not statistics, and these projections do not apply to the individual life. And I've had patients who have defied all the odds prognostically, and I have several stage 4 pancreatic cancer patients that are still alive and well 7 years after diagnosis, and it's unheard of, but it's because they experienced healing. I still won't tell them they're cured, but healing to me is a more important focus than focusing on cure. And sometimes cure can actually trap people into looking places and acts of desperation that they might not actually benefit from, right? Whereas they might have just needed to sit in their space and reflect on their life and think about the things that they perhaps need to let go of, and let those things be covered by unconditional love. I've always used the eponym for fear, false evidence appearing real. But I really like the one that Susie gave us, the forgetting every available resource. Because when we remember, even if I had cancer right now, I'm in a place that's safe, I'm warm, I'm fed, I have people who love me. And if we start focusing on the gratitude, then it transforms the way we're thinking about our situation. And I think it's really important for people to hear that cancer does not have to be a death sentence. We recognize cancer as a primitive cell. We don't like to think about how we came about, but it's really quite miraculous that, our mom and dad had a good night together and we became implanted as a trophoblastic cell in your mother's uterus. And then every week from that moment to the first 10 weeks of life, 10 trillion cells of you formed. You are really fearfully and wonderfully made. If I were to try to count to 1 trillion, it would take me 2,000 years to count in 1 second at a time. So the fact that 10 trillion cells can come together to make you and have everything know right where it was supposed to go is really quite a phenomenon. And we don't tell people how miraculous they are nearly enough. And when we consider that the energy that animates us comes into us through our heartbeat at about age 10 weeks or 8 to 10 weeks, and that becomes the energy that animates you for your entire life, no matter how long that may be. And so when cancer occurs, what's actually happening is that the cancer cell is responding to an injury, and it reverts back to a primitive program that was closed off when it grew into that mature tissue. So it very much comes down to a cellular reaction. I don't think cancer is random. I think it's just an injury response. And so as my practice has evolved the last 30 years, I'm directing more energy to finding out the injury, or at least making the person aware that this is an injury response. So you have injuries in your mind, body, spirit. All of these things need to be addressed. They need to be healed. And that can go on in the background of whatever other treatment is going on. In fact, sometimes when someone presents to me with a large tumor burden, we have to talk with them about the palliative treatment that they're going to have in order to reduce the cancer burden so that they can actually get some of these things right and begin their healing process. So, one of my biggest goals is to help people to not be afraid of the mainstream treatment, but to also understand how that fits with what they need for their healing. Because the key to living with cancer is to stop making it. And I want you to let that just wash over you. Because when we don't address the need for healing and we think it's all about the drugs, we can clean some cancer out. But then if we aren't changing the soil that grew the cancer in the first place, the terrain that grew the cancer, we're still stimulating the same sort of seed to grow. So the next phase is looking at things that chemically signal cells to grow. And these are, coincidentally, many of them happen to be pro-inflammatory molecules and sugar. And we know that one of the things, in addition to all the other things about sugar, is it causes the development of glycoproteins on our cells. Glyco means sugar. So the more sugar proteins that a cancer cell has, the more it behaves like a baby wanting lollies. It's gone back to its primitive childhood. So that the goal then is to help it shed some of these things, to grow up and to start functioning as a healthy tissue again. And so what I find is that when we get people to start managing their inflammation, getting off of toxic foods, getting the pesticides out of their life, restoring their mineral balance, because cancer, the third thing about cancer, it's a disorder of injury, inflammation, and also, very importantly, malnutrition. And we don't think of ourselves as being malnourished because a lot of things have crept into our diets and our grocery stores that we didn't even know about, some of them in our processed foods, including glyphosate, which robs your body of your microbiome, which then robs you of B12, K2, and most of your minerals, including magnesium, selenium, zinc, and manganese, all of which are low at a cellular level in most cancer patients. So coincidentally, these are key cofactors for enzymes that are needed for your immune function, for energy production, and for your detoxification pathways. So I love it when I can get a hold of someone before their chemotherapy, because then I can begin nourishing them, get them on a plan to where they're not making more cancer as soon as their other doctor is killing off the cancer, and also get them nourishing their gut and repairing their microbiome, because these things naturally create resilience in the person going through treatment. So it's very, very important if you're facing chemotherapy to don't put yourself on a protein restricted diet. If you are going through chemotherapy, it's very important that you get adequate protein. You need the same amount of protein as a burn victim. You need the protein to repair your gut and to make new cells after you're done with your cancer. And then we're looking into the preventative mode or the secondary prevention mode. Then we get more into the perhaps a little bit less meat, your good fats and your fresh fruits and vegetables, just like Katie said, and movement. We know exercise almost doubles the survival duration of people with advanced cancers. And it's because our body is signaled that I'm still alive here. Same with vitamin D and B12. We are so hardwired to have vitamin D. We are meant to be out in the sun, hunting and gathering. This is what our Paleolithic ancestors were doing. Paleolithic era has been the last 40,000 years of, human genetics, and we haven't changed much. We are still those people that need to be collecting vitamin D through sunlight on our skin on a regular basis. Of course, we have a very harsh sun here, so it's best in the morning or the evening and not the extremes. But these are things that we're just hardwired to have. Same with B12. So if I have a low B12 level and a low vitamin D level, these two things signal to the body that I've gone to my cave and I can no longer hunt. And of course, the body begins slowing down. And especially if I'm sedentary and not moving very much, and I'm not sleeping very well because I've spent too much time on my box querying Dr. Google and worrying about myself. So just shifting ourselves into movement, positivity, connection, good food, all of these things, in my view, pay huge dividends and really, really pay off. And I think they're actually quite attainable for most people. But the biggest thing is moving beyond fear and recognizing that you do have the power within you to shape your thoughts and your perception and engage with your food. And if you have doubts about your food, or you are unable to afford organic food, there's a simple solution. Bless it. Bless it to the nourishment of your body, and that no harm will come to you from eating it. And I think there's a huge metaphysical aspect, as everyone has alluded to. Cancer is blocked energy. It's a primitive little cell that's energetically impaired. It's a reaction to injury. So the whole thing is about healing the injury, fixing the nutritional bankruptcy, and cutting down on the inflammation. And then the body has a chance to heal, and hopefully the mind is in a better place to focus on the prospect of healing and to alter those beliefs that would say cancer is a death sentence. Because in my experience of 35 years now, it's not a death sentence. I have so many people that live to tell about it, and despite their stage, they keep going. I don't know how. Sometimes I try not to think about it. And I challenge those people to keep turning up to heal their oncologists, so that their oncologists can actually have more hope and perhaps liven the mood of the place a little bit. So that's me. And I just, it's such a blessing to get to share with this group and to hear the wisdom that you've imparted to all of us. I always learn heaps when I spend time with these ladies, and hopefully you've learned something from me as well. Thank you.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you, Anna. So that's the end of our 4 amazing speakers for this section. I'm going to open the floor now for questions. We've got 14 minutes left, so we are going to stick to time. We will get off at 8:30. The very first question, I'll get the ball going, comes from Glenn. And his question is, what is your position on yogurt? Ladies?
Love it.
Coconut yogurt or dairy yogurt? There's 2 different.
Yeah, I have to say, if you're gluten sensitive or dairy intolerant, coconut yogurt is the bomb. It also has more calories. I managed to gain about 5 kilos with when I discovered Raglan coconut chocolate yogurt. It became my guilty pleasure, and I couldn't figure out why I needed to buy new clothes. But it's quite good for people that are on the skinny side. And also, if you have ovarian cancer, I try to get people off of casein in particular, which seems to be an inflammatory modifier for primitive ovarian cells.
Yeah. Is there anything you want to add to that, Katie?
Oh, I think that's great. If you really struggle and have to have it, like if you're just a milk fiend, A2 milk, or just start slowly weaning, you're better off with having cream, just a tiny bit of cream versus milk. Then
organic is really important if you can source it. Although the fermentation with Bifidobacter and Lactobacillus and Acidophilus, those denature a lot of the ring structures in our pesticides. But regular milk is, if it's not organic, regular milk is loaded with glyphosate in many cases, because it's just in all of our waterways, our grazing land. And so it's if you do drink regular milk, which I don't necessarily encourage, but go for the organic if at all possible, if you can source it.
Wonderful. Anybody else got anything to add, or should we move on to the next question?
Oh, Lisa, I would correct your little thing. Keep turning up. Oh, okay. The key to stop living with cancer is to stop making. The key to living with cancer. The key to living with cancer is to stop making it.
Oops, sorry. Thank you for correction.
No, I didn't want anyone to go away with thinking that that.
I loved what you said. I got so carried away in the moment.
Thank you.
We've got some other questions that have come in here. Sharon, what are some ways to release suppressed emotions?
Justine, do you want to speak to that? And I can add?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, well, there's lots of different ways, right? You know, and it's got to resonate with what feels right for each of us. But, you know, most people have heard of therapy. You know, that can be really helpful for people, whether it's counseling or a psychologist or psychotherapist, doesn't really matter, energy healer. Even a massage, going and having a massage can help release the emotion. I know for myself, I had a lot of deep-seated anger, and if you ask my husband, he would say I'm very good at releasing anger, which was things like throwing things. So, you know, like literally like releasing the emotion is so super important, or yelling or screaming, doesn't really matter as long as you're not too close to the neighbours so they don't call the police on you. But look, there's honestly so many ways. But for me personally, through my journey, when I first started, I went to an emotional freedom technique practitioner, and that was quite amazing. So it's about tapping through the meridian lines of the body and speaking at the same time to help you release that emotion. And I also did a lot of journaling and burning letters. So if I was really angry at my oncologist or the surgeon, I'd actually write them a letter. And then actually have a wee bit of a ceremony and burn it so that I could, you know, release it. So there's so many different ways, but it's got to feel right for the person. And
you should have given them the letter, Justine. Why did you did?
Well, you know, it's really interesting, Anna, because my oncologist at the time really helped me, because he said to me, if you believe the chemo won't work for you, it won't. And if you believe it will, then it will. And that really helped me. I was surprised he said that. So
that's really beautiful, because we know that the placebo effect makes things, if someone believes it's going to work, something is 25 to 30% more effective. And I always thought that was kind of the measure of our faith, because you can give someone sugar water and you can have a 25% response rate. If someone actually believes that it's going to help them. Sugar water is probably a bad example. Let's say saline, but because sugar would be a definite negative. But just the power and the biology of belief totally changes the body, enhances the immune system, you know, resonates with hope, and all of those things factor into, you know, our general wellness, as it were.
Have you got anything to add there, Susie?
I think that was beautifully expressed, Justine. I think that, you know, often when we're hit with the diagnosis, that it does lead to some introspection. So that first step is actually recognizing or bringing an understanding to what we are suppressing, and where it is stored in the body, and that's kind of, it's called it's a somatic approach, and so, as Justine said, there are various ways, and some will resonate and some won't. But I would perhaps suggest that when it's in relation to cancer, that it is best practice to be, if you can access someone professional to work through that process, particularly if there's been a trauma basis to that. So, yeah.
Okay, thanks, Susie. A question from Catherine. Should I stop supplements while doing extended water fasts, i.e. 72 hours?
That's a really good question. It really depends on what supplements they are. Some of them can be really helpful during a fast, but like 72 hours is not significant. You could definitely stop them if it's just like, depending on if you're doing a push press. So for example, if you're in a kill phase or if it's for around chemotherapy, it really depends on what supplements they are. It's a good question, and usually for say this is Catherine, say this is for chemotherapy. I don't usually get people to do much of their supplements, but some of their off-label drugs I'll continue and get them to do fats as a way that helps to absorb and doesn't kind of break the fast. So yeah, it really depends on what supplements they are and for what usage they're going to be for.
What would be the best way for Catherine to find out what's okay and what's not?
I think the question to ask would be, what's the purpose of the fast? If it's for increasing apoptosis and for increasing, oh God, what's the name of it? Perimenopause brain. Come on, help me.
Autophagy.
If it's for autophagy, then I'd keep some of the off-label drugs and use fats. But if it's just if it's around chemotherapy, then I don't think it would be too much of a problem to cut the supplements down. God, it's such a individual question. I'm not actually answering that question that well, but I guess it would depend.
I think if you're seeking detox, it's really it's okay to take things like magnesium and zinc, because they're both very important for your autophagy and your energy pathways. And depending on what chemotherapy you're getting, you're going to have a higher level of magnesium, and you're going to actually be needing magnesium, or you can actually get muscle cramps and that sort of thing. And I can't really fast that long myself. I'm a salt freak, and I've got to have some salt. So, you just, a water fast would never work for me. I would fall on the floor. So depending upon your adrenal function, your immune function, I think you just kind of take it a day at a time. And I think it's okay to take your minerals in particular, because those usually are facilitating the exchange of various toxins in your kidney if you're doing it for detox. So many of your sodium and your potassium and all of these things are balanced in the kidney. So it's sometimes important to make sure you're not just throwing those off as well. So they're going to actually facilitate your detox plans if that's the goal.
Thank you. A question from Lisa. What about organic almond and coconut milk?
Great.
What was the question? What about organic?
What about organic almond and coconut milk?
I'd say just check the labels, because a lot of them can have constituents like guar gums, thickening agents, additional. Yeah, I'd check the back and see what else is in them.
Okay, great. And there's a question from Cheryl. I think we've got evidence of the answer to this one right here with us. Are there any oncologists open to integrative treatments? I haven't found any so far.
Anna, do you want to answer this?
Processing that one.
They tend to in New Zealand, there's a great fear of the medical council, and because the medical council it has a pharmaceutical bias, and so people feel obligated to tell patients that it doesn't matter what you eat, and here's this drug, and so it's kind of unsatisfactory for everybody, really. And I think that the doctors themselves would be more open if they didn't have such an environment of such a threatening environment here, really. And it's really a shame. And I know a lot of oncologists in this country that when you get them alone, and when they see that you're a sensible person and you're going with your treatment, and then you mention that you're doing this on the side, and they can tell that it's not hurting you, then they tend to get more open. And I see that, and that's what I mean by healing them, because, like I said when I was speaking before, it's the dichotomy is really kind of distressing for patients, and they feel like their parents don't get along. And I spoke at a NIM conference to about 100 integrative medicine doctors and asked them how many of them had actually spoken to their patient's oncologist. And only one person raised their hand. So the failure of communication is on both sides of the equation, and it's really quite a shame. And the response has been for the drug industry to begin trying to regulate our supplements right out of existence. We have Julia Ruckledge, who just published some amazing data on neural inflammation and supplements that can help that. And the government's always moaning that we don't have any data for supplements, so we can't possibly justify spending pharmac money for these. And they had the data, and then they're like, oh, well, we're going to regulate these as a drug now. and they've stopped the over-the-counter sale of these things, kind of like they did with melatonin back in the day. So it's kind of it's very difficult, and one has to just be very patient, and kind of main emphasis is on your diet, your home, your connections, your movement, your exercise, and just doing a few basic supplements. And then, and basic supplements are not likely to interfere with your chemotherapy. It's only the mega dosing of supplements like the high dose IV vitamin C that, are that the oncologists really worry about. But if you're just getting about the same amount of turmeric, for instance, that you could get in a nice curry, they're not going to be freaked out about that. And I think, the more we can do to normalize nutrition and spiritual healing and all of these resources, the better. I was surprised that in one of the reviews that I had, the oncologist was bad-mouthing any sort of mental health intervention, like even mindfulness. I was like, really? You got to be kidding. So it is kind of sad, but I'm believing that the oncologists are going to be healed going forward, because that does need to happen, and I think it can.
And I agree with that. And I do believe at the moment in New Zealand, there are maybe about 4 or 5 who are behind the Iron Curtain, quite becoming more comfortable with specific things, but very, very slowly and drip fed. And a lot of having a good relationship with specific oncologists in New Zealand has been an absolute a decade, I'd say, worth of work. Anna's definitely a one-off for sure. There's no one like Anna in New Zealand. But what I have found is that the more you attract more honey, more bees with honey than you do with vinegar. And just slowly. Have you seen this research paper? Hey, this is really interesting. What do you think about this? Or have you heard about this treatment? Or, hey, look, I want to try this. Will you support me? The hard part, I think, with some of my patients has been getting their oncologists on board with some of their off-label drugs or supplements that have no contraindications with chemotherapy, but because they don't know enough about it and they're overworked, it's a lot of pressure. So they have limited time for research and reading. One thing that's helpful is taking in the research paper and highlighting the most important parts, or giving them time to read and saying, hey, look, can I get back to you in a week and let me know what you think about this? So just don't expect, they have a lot on their plate too, so don't expect them to know everything about all treatments. Like, we're only just getting our heads around hypothermia for stage 4 cancer patients, and where to send people overseas for that too. And hyperbaric chamber is becoming a lot more, you can get a hyperbaric chamber at home now, and you can use it before your chemotherapy for better benefits. Don't expect any of your health professionals to know about that if they haven't looked at the research. So it is really still a patient-led project. Yeah.
I would thank Mandy for listing the Harbor Cancer Center and Wellness. I have had a lot of patients in common with them, and they do seem to be much more affirming of people that actually want to have a more integrative approach. And I think there's Lisa Dawson also I noticed at some point she joined the Society of Integrative Oncology. So she seems to be a little bit more open.
She's Whangarei, isn't she? She's in Whangarei. Well, there's the bowel cancer. There's Ben Lawrence. He's excellent. I find him to
be great.
with. And then brain cancer and blood cancer seem to be a little bit more open. Anyway.
Lovely. Thank you all so much. Our wonderful speakers, Susie, Justine, Katie, Anna. We will be sending out a replay of this and also some follow-up emails with maybe links to some of the references we've spoken about in the webinar. And there's also been a lot of questions that we haven't been able to get around to answering. So I will try and find a way to get back to each of you individually. We'll make our best bet, but apologies if we don't. Can I just get everyone in the audience who's still left here, just show your love in the chat and thank these wonderful speakers for turning up tonight and sharing their experience and their wisdom so generously. I appreciate all the support that they've given me, that they give everybody else, and the dedication to their work, which is making such a difference. So on that note, I think we will call it a night and go forth and rest and chill and nurture and love yourself somehow, and have a wonderful morning tomorrow morning and a fresh new day. So thank you, everybody. Go well.
Tiano.